for tonight. Have a good Thanksgiving, everyone. Tucker's up next.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. I'm Mark Stein, in for Tucker this evening, but he will be here for a special appearance later in the show. But first, the continuing crisis on America's southern border and a new legal ruling that could have quite an impact. Jonathan Hunt has more.
Good evening, Mark. Thousands of Central American migrants are at the U.S.-Mexico border awaiting their chance to apply for asylum. Some are trying to circumvent what can be a lengthy process by crossing the border illegally where there isn't a checkpoint and then claiming asylum while already on U.S. soil. It is those would-be illegal immigrants that President Trump targeted in a November 9th proclamation, saying anyone who crossed the border between official points of entry would not be eligible for asylum. But the courts have again ruled against the president, with U.S. District Judge John Tigar, who was appointed by President Obama, writing, quote, "Whatever the scope of the president's authority, he may not rewrite the immigration laws to impose a condition that Congress has expressly forbidden." The Trump administration can appeal, and the case would likely be heard by the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which has already ruled against the president on a number of immigration issues, a fact clearly not lost on Mr. Trump, who berated the 9th Circuit as he left the White House for his Thanksgiving break today.
Well, you go to the 9th Circuit and it's a disgrace, and I'm going to put in a major complaint because you cannot win, if you're us, a case in the 9th Circuit.
Around 3,000 migrants from the caravan that originated in Central America have gathered in Tijuana on the Mexico side of the U.S. border. The Department of Homeland Security says there are around 500, quote, criminals among them, although it has not said specifically what each of their alleged crimes is. And on the U.S. side, 5,800 troops are now stationed to support Customs and Border Protection agents at an estimated cost of $72 million. According to the Pentagon today, and amid a certain degree of confusion as to how long those troops will stay and exactly what their mission is. Mark?
Thanks, Jonathan. Juan Hernandez is a former advisor to the Mexican president, Vicente Fox, and he joins us now. Juan, in what sense are these people in the caravan asylum seekers?
Well, I've met with many of them. I met with the 7,200 caravan in the state of Guanajuato that I now work for under the governor Diego Sinue, specifically working with immigrants, mostly Mexican immigrants living in the United States. But also it was my duty to make sure that we treated a humanitarian way these 7,200 that went through Guanajuato. And I'll tell you, you sit down with them for a minute and you're in tears. These are children, these are women. Let me finish. These are people looking for a better way of life, like your family and my family did many years ago coming to the United States.
Well, I don't know about you. I didn't come as an asylum seeker, but if I was an asylum seeker, this caravan has marched across two national frontiers. It marched into Guatemala illegally, and then it marched into Mexico illegally. If you're an asylum seeker, aren't you supposed to seek asylum in the first safe country you come to?
My friend, we all know the United States is today the most powerful nation in the world. It's the dream of many, many people who are just trying to get out of dire poverty, violence, to be able to reach the United States and to be able to be a blessing as they are the immigrants to this nation. That's the dream. They're coming to the United States and they're seeking asylum. They're not invading, and it's such a small number. We're talking about 10,000, 12,000 total, my friend.
No, but you're now saying that a dream is a basis for an asylum. I might have a dream.
Definitely.
I might have a dream to live in Barbara Streisand's house. It doesn't mean I have the right to go and move into her guest bedroom.
But if you're in the block away from her home and you're being attacked and you're being raped and your children, the only chance that they will have is to maybe join a gang, and you can't even feed them, you would be knocking on that that movie star's home saying, is there some way that I could be here at your home and work for you?
Yeah, she still wouldn't let me in, Juan. You know that.
I know she would. She would, my friend.
Here's the thing, though. You talk about all the children, there's women being raped. These are overwhelmingly young men. What kind of refugees, what kind of asylum seekers leave the old and the sick and their kids and their women folk back in Guatemala or wherever, and it's just the young men who come across the frontier? It's overwhelmingly young men.
Yes, probably about 75 to 80% are young men. You're right. They're the ones, back to our big dreams, they're the ones who want to do better for their families, and they're leaving desperately. They see no way that they can be able to survive in some of the places where they come from.
No, but just everyone with a dream. There's 7 billion people on the planet. And as you say, America's the most powerful, wealthiest, all the rest of it. Does that give 6.5 billion people the right to move to the United States?
It's not that it's the right. Those many would claim that it is a human right, that if you are in a dire situation, you're going to try, even if you have to break some administrative rules. They have not committed crimes. They are just seeking asylum.
You're now part of the state government in Mexico.
Yes, sir, proudly.
What's wrong with your state, then? If they just want a better life, why can't they move to your state? Your state's better than Honduras, wherever they come from?
Yes, it is, but the dream for them was the United States. There's a wonderful article by Father Mello, a priest from Honduras, and he called it the boil over. I suggest that many of your viewers read it. I think it was New York Times came out, the translation. And he said that these were a people, they're not organized, they weren't paid by anyone. A few dozens were going to desperately just leave the country, and it just boiled over. Literally thousands said, we can take it no longer, we must seek a better life. And it's happening, you're right, all over the world. Today there are 250 million people going from one country to another trying to find a better life. We have to deal with it. We must be a country of laws, and I'm speaking Mexico and the United States, but also countries that are we're being tested, my friend, today. Other nations have not passed the test.
Well, wait a minute.
We need to pass this test of being humanitarian and give dignity to these people.
Why is it in the interests of other countries for all their most talented people to move to the United States or Western Europe? Why is it in why is it in the interest of Guatemala or anywhere else to be denuded of its most talented people?
Well, sure, it's mostly economic. In the United States, if you, and I'm sure you do, read the statistics, the United States is growing less than 1%. The United States needs about 350,000 new people every year. These 10,000 are good people. I met them. They went through our wonderful state of Guanajuato that, by the way, is doing great financially, but their dream is to come to the United States.
There's plenty of good people. If you go to these airport diners, by the way, you enter your meal order on a machine. Nobody needs people anymore. It's all automation. Juan, thank you for that. It is true. 30% of the world's going to be unemployed in a few years. So what's the real situation? Thank you, Juan. What's the real situation at the border, and what are agents actually having to deal with there as this caravan approaches? Tom Homan is the former acting director of ICE, and he joins us. We've seen dramatic scenes going on at the southern border, Tom, as this caravan prepares essentially to cross with impunity its third national frontier. What's going to happen?
Well, real quick, let me respond to Juan's comments. First of all, we're the most welcoming country in this world. We welcome more refugees in the United States than every other country in the world combined. So enough. And you can't want to be a part of the greatest country on earth and not respect our laws. Seeking a better life doesn't qualify for asylum. So they're committing fraud. So that's just a stone cold fact. What's going on the border, look, this president has got this nation ready. He's got additional CBP officers down there. He's got DOD down there. They have built extra infrastructure. They are building facilities to detain people, which is the secret. What this president needs to do, which hasn't happened in the past, is if they get to the United States and enter, they need to be detained until they see a judge, because the Central American population is running around 89 to 91% will lose their case,
right, because
they don't qualify for asylum. But they have to be in custody when they lose the case so they can be removed, which sends a strong message to the rest of the world that we are a nation of laws. We'll give you a due process, but you got to live by the judge's decision also.
Well, you say we're a nation of laws. We're getting government by judges. Judges have ruled that immigrants subject to deportation for being convicted criminals have a right to say goodbye. That's apparently in the Constitution. A judge has ruled he stopped the deportation of 1,400 Iraqi nationals who were committed of crime. Another judge struck down Trump's travel ban because foreign nationals apparently have an affirmative right to visit their relatives in the United States. In other words, aren't the courts actually making a mockery of any effective immigration or asylum enforcement?
They absolutely are. In the 3 cases you just mentioned, I was the ICE director during all those cases. I mean, there's one guy, the first case, he had an order of deportation. He had due process at great taxpayer expense, was order removed, but wasn't hit out. Then when we finally did find him to arrest him, the judge wanted him more time to say goodbye to his family, and he knew for years he had to leave.
Yeah.
But yes, especially
that's the constitutional right to a long goodbye. The judge managed to detect that.
Look, we're in a state right now, the ACLU just sued the Trump administration for the right for people to enter this country illegally and be able to claim asylum. The Ninth Circuit has lost their minds.
Right.
And this is going to continue. This isn't so much about the rule of law, this is about an attack on the Trump administration. But when he did this asylum proclamation, he based on the same general principle as what they call the travel ban. We won that in the Supreme Court. We'll win this. The problem is, until it gets to the Supreme Court, thousands and thousands and thousands of more caravans going to come because of this ruling.
Thanks a lot, Tom. You're right on that. As we mentioned, activist judges aren't just out of control on immigration or inventing rights for Central American migrants. Today, federal judge Mark Goldsmith ordered the release of more than 100 criminal immigrants from Iraq. Some of these guys committed crimes as severe as assault and even murder. And so Iraq doesn't want them back. That's too bad then, because as Judge Goldsmith has ruled, the government can't even hold them. They have to let them go back into the community. Increasingly, the rule for judges seems to be blocking any deportations at all, even for